right. We are now live.
Alrighty. Are we ready to get started, or do we want to?
Yeah, we can dink around for just a couple of more minutes and see what Chris comes.
Okay.
When I said live just now, I was reminded. I listened to the Star Talk Radio podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's a radio show on, I think, PBS. Well, yeah, public broadcast. Anyway, what do they call that? It's not PBS. PBS is the TV.
NPR.
NPR. There you go, National Public Radio. But anyway, Neil Tyson, you know who he is, right?
Yes.
When he gets behind the mic with the headphones on, he turns into a discount Barry White, and it kind of gets hard to listen to after a while, because he'll say, "You're listening to Star Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Grass Tyson." And once you pick it, it's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And
right.
Once I noticed it, it's like I can't unnotice that anymore. And he'll have his a guest on from time to time, or they'll be talking about a topic or whatever. And like, say somebody asks him a question, when he's answering it, he's just talking normally in his regular voice. But then when it's like time to transition to commercial, suddenly this guy comes out. StarTalkRadio.com.
No, I know there's certain things that I've noticed, and it makes it impossible for me to enjoy some things.
Yeah.
And and it's if you don't notice it, or if you don't care, you can go, "What's wrong with that?" And I'm like, "Didn't you hear the way he said his R's? I can't."
Right.
Ah! So
can't be unseen. Yeah, like
Yep.
the scene in Star Wars where they're in the control room and all the stormtroopers break in,
Mhm.
and C-3PO and R2-D2 hide. One of the stormtroopers bumps his head on the door as he walks in. Once you see it, you can't not see it. Every time I watch that, he walks, he just cracks his head. But it's just happening in the midst of everything, and I must have seen it 30 times and never noticed it. Then the one time I did, it's like, oh, I can't not see that now.
Well, and I remember The Princess Bride when they're rolling down the hill, and you can clearly see people.
They didn't even
Princess
try.
Buttercup has a beard, and when they re-released it, they edited that, and it's not there anymore. And honestly, it kind of ruined the movie for me, because I was like, wait a minute, I didn't see it. So I go back and I'm like, dang, what? I can't watch this anymore. I still watch it, but.
I mean, that bothered you more than the rodents of unusual size?
I mean, no. I liked they were so cheesy. They weren't trying to be realistic. They were going for cheese.
So the TLDR version of this email from Jen, is she going to stay for the whole show or just for the interview?
I haven't asked her that yet.
Well, you gave her the choice, and her response was, okay, that sounds fun. Somebody's not communicating.
Yeah, I haven't followed up with her yet on that. That's just the last response I got from her.
Roger.
And then I was just, so you could kind of see some of the stuff she put in there.
Yeah, I'll read that later. For the guy who's watching right now, I assume you're a guy, since most of our listeners are guys, is delayed, and we're vamping. But I went ahead and started the Hangout just so that you could hear this great conversation.
Yeah, we don't get much practice vamping, so we thought we'd give it a shot now.
It's new and unusual to us. StarTalkRadio.com.
Yeah.
Booking.yeah. I love those commercials. I really do.
Every time you say, "Oh, we just want to see yeah." I just thought of that one day driving down the road when I heard that commercial. I was like, oh man. And so now I think about it all the time.
Yeah. Sean makes fun of the way I say elementopie.com. Elementopie.com. Yeah, he always makes fun of me about that. It's funny how you develop these patterns.
Right.
See, my hesitation about starting is Chris jumping in smoothly. But yeah, since when do I worry about smoothness on this show?
Yeah, I was like, don't worry, that won't happen.
I'm going to try. Let's see if it works. If I preemptively cycle the power on my board. Hold on. I don't know if that'll help or not, but it won't hurt.
Like chicken soup to a dead man.
Wow. Okay.
That's one of my dad's special sayings.
All right, so let's go ahead and start the recording. We'll get started, and Chris will join in when he joins in.
All right.
If it's
recording now.
I mean, we've all been in there. It could be a long, long time.
Right.
All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux, episode 163. We didn't think of nothing. Recorded October 5th, 2014, and brought to you by Element OP Productions. ElementOP.com. The title that Seth put in here temporarily was We'll Think of Something, and we didn't. So I've just officially made the title of the show, We Didn't Think of Nothing. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Linux show that's not about Linux, but about life in the context of Linux. I am your goofy host, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and we are joined currently by only, as if he's not enough, the gooey kid, Mr. Seth Anderson. Hey, Seth.
Hello, Mark, and welcome to the Element OPI faithful. We are so glad you could stop by this week.
So we got one of these last-minute emails from Chris saying, hey, guys, I started a household project that should have been a 15-minute project, and I'm now an hour into it. I'll catch up with you when I can. If you've ever done that, then you know we may or may not see him tonight. Those 15-minute projects can sometimes take days.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, that. Let me fix this little plumbing thing. 5 minutes. Yeah. That's all it's going to take. 2 days later, no showering in the house. Can't flush the commode. So yeah. We've all been there.
I was going to replace a leaky gasket on a toilet, the wax ring on a toilet, and the bolts that hold it to the floor were so rusted, I couldn't get them off. Couldn't get the thing off, and so in the process of trying to pry it off, I snapped one of them off. So at that point, the only choice I had to remove that toilet was to take a sledgehammer and break the porcelain around the bolt so that I could lift it out. So at that point, you've committed to putting in a new toilet. And again, this was one of the things that's supposed to take an hour. So I did that. I smashed it, picked it up, and as I was carrying it out, it was awkward. I dropped it. Porcelain scattered all over the floor, up and down the hallway for 15 feet in either direction, and created a little sharp landmine. So I had to clean all that up. Then I go get a new toilet. So yeah, that little, I expected it to take about an hour. It was a day, a full day. So these things happen, especially if you have an older house.
Yes, they do. Especially if you never actually finished working on your house. You just kind of got into a livable position and stopped. So
yeah, your house is kind of like that. It's been in that state for what, 35 years?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's, like we can use the upstairs bathroom now, but for the longest you couldn't. It was just there. And
I had a friend in high school. They moved out to the country, and of course the country was the small town I lived in. And they bought some land and didn't have the money to build a house. They pitched a tent. This family of 4 lived in this tent through one of the coldest winters I can remember. And then that spring threw up a one-room house. And that one-room house is what they all lived in for years. I mean, all through high school. And even later, then at one point they threw up another room, but it was just like sheets of plywood stuck together like a shack, like a prairie shack. And the guy, the dad, made a lot of money. He did something with technology. He wasn't poor. It was just they didn't have the resources to hire somebody to build a house. They were going to do it themselves, and it took a decade or more before they finally actually built a house. And I guess you can get used to just about anything.
Yeah, that's what you know, and what you put up with at home, you would kill somebody for, and you would kill somebody on the street if they did it. But if that's home, that's your normal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, people. It's amazing what people can function with as being normal.
I guess maybe that just goes to show you how spoiled we are, in our 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath, 2-car garage house, complaining that the kitchen's just a little too small for entertaining.
Yep.
All right. So this week is actually starting in September, but for my family, it was this week. It's apple season, and here in Georgia, that's a big thing. We have like apple festivals and the whole thing. So if you head just a few miles north up from where I live, you go to this little town called Ellijay, and there are just apple orchards as far as the eye can see in Ellijay. And it's become a thing to have pick your own apples, and then you have events that have sort of sprung up around that. And there's this place we've been going to the last couple of years called the B.J. Reese Orchard. And this year they've expanded beyond anything they ever had before, and like to the point of like building new buildings for stuff. They're really growing. And so we went out there yesterday, Saturday, and you buy essentially a bushel or a peck size bag, and you just go out and you can just fill it up. And then they have pony rides, and they had a zip line and pig races, and the one thing that we did was they had to set up some air cannons, and they would load them with like the bird picked apples, whatever. They just have thousands of bushels of apples they can't sell, so they load them in the cannons and let you shoot them. That was a heck of a lot of fun.
Wow, that does sound fun.
Yeah, so it was great. We spent the whole day together doing that because that's what you do in North Georgia. So apple season is here. I have 3, 4. A bushel and a half, and if you don't know how much a bushel is, it's probably, think of a good sized laundry basket. That's a bushel, more or less. So I have 1.5 of those of various flavors of apples hanging around my house, because you get stupid when you're out there. Oh, I need this. Oh, and I need this, and I need this, and you realize I haven't eaten this many apples in my life since the day I was born. And now I own them. So we're going to be making apple pies and apple sauce, and then probably throwing a whole bunch of them away.
Yeah, dried apples, apple-scented fragrance potpourri bags. Barbie will probably go crazy with those. But yeah, and a bushel, think about something as big around as a basketball goal, as deep as a basketball net, but not kind of pulled in at the middle. And that would give you a rough idea of a bushel.
Yeah,
for all of you non-country
right.
folk out there.
Yeah, so a peck is a half a bushel or a quarter of a bushel. I can never remember which.
Peck is a quarter.
Yeah. So we bought 4 peck bags, so that's a bushel between us, and then bought more apples other than what we picked. So picked 4 pecks of pickled peppers. No, of apples. I'm gonna have to, after the show, look up those terms. Where did bushel and peck come from?
I don't know, but my grandpa had, not like a super huge farm, but he farmed several acres, enough to have a couple of tractors, and so I was quite familiar with having to pick a bushel of peas when I was growing up by hand. Not the most fun thing in the world, but it is what it is, I guess. I have character now, dadgummit.
So I'm familiar with apple butter, right? It's basically super cooked applesauce, so that it's really really sweet and brown and yummy. I didn't know there was such a thing as peach butter. Another thing Georgia is known for is peach. So I bought some peach butter as well as apple butter, and was introduced to something called chow chow. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Think pickle relish, like the green stuff you put on hot dogs, but made with pickled cabbage instead of pickled cucumbers.
Ugh, I don't think I want to think about
It
that.
wasn't bad. It was, I mean, it was very sweet in that same way that pickle relish is sweet. Um, but it was odd. Apparently, it's a Georgia thing, and people just buy it, and you can get it in the sweet or the hot or the super hot, which I tasted. I sampled some of them. They were all sweet. It was basically like the hot or mild, but they all had that syrupy relish kind of undertone to them. But
Right.
it was weird. I'd never heard of it, and then I heard a friend talking about it, and then the very next day I saw it for sale. It's weird how things like that happen. Like when you hear a new word you never heard before, and then suddenly it's all around you.
I
What's
wonder if
that?
it's one of those things you've just never heard of, or you've seen, but you never registered because you didn't know what it was. I wonder if there's a psychological aspect to that.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen that happen, right? You
Right.
learn something new, a new concept, a new word, and then suddenly it's there all the time. So Chris has joined us. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, welcome everyone.
So we were just sort of vamping in the way that we do. We're talking about weird foods that are regional.
Okay.
So you'll be joining the Hangout. I sent you a second invitation. So while he's doing that, Seth, tell us how stupid you were this week.
Man, well, September was my hard month financially because I paid for my Linux contract, and then I got this guy wanted to meet me so much he ran into my car at the intersection, and I paid for that and waiting on the insurance company to pay me back. And just as a side, well, I don't think I want to. I want to badmouth his insurance company, but I'm going to be nice and not. They were very lackluster in their customer service abilities. But anyway, so I made it through the month, and I had enough money, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to pay $500 on my credit card. The only problem was when I went to pay, instead of putting $500, I put that there. And while I make decent money now, I don't have $5,000 in my bank account, and the bank I'm a credit union, so they only charge me $25 for the NSF thing, and I had to call the credit card company and say, how do I do this? Because I overpaid you, and my bank sent me a letter saying they won't honor it. So I went in and paid them $475, so I'll still have some money in my account.
Yeah, so that's maybe an artifact of online bill pay that probably is less likely to happen when you're writing a check, because you have to write the zeros and then write the words. But online, you
Right.
just type in a field and go.
Right.
Yeah,
I hate when that happens.
I got the confirmation email saying, but I just glanced at it and I saw 500 when in actuality 5,000 was there, because I was digging through my deleted items looking for that email, and I was going to say, you messed up, and I was like, no, I messed up.
Oops.
Yeah. So yeah, I did a boo-boo.
Yeah, I was told Seth earlier I did something similar. I misplaced a zero on the other side, and the bill was say $170, and I sent him $17, and I got a nasty gram, and I was like, no, wait, I paid that, and then I went to look back. Yeah, I paid it a fraction of what I actually owed. Oops, sorry about that.
Whoopsie. Hate when that happens.
So, Chris, did you get your project finished, or just finished enough?
Finished enough to make it through the night. I'll have to go down to the local store and pick up some more stuff tomorrow. Because, of course, in little town Montana, the hardware store closes on Saturdays.
Yeah, it's an axiom that everything takes longer than you think. I have learned that. However long I think it's going to take, I need to add 50% to that.
Oh, and then some.
Yeah.
Because this particular problem, if it would have been done any way close to being the right way, I wouldn't have had near as many problems. But yeah, my landlord's not the smartest apple in the tree.
When I'm traveling, I leave what I call idiot time. That's time for me to be an idiot and still get there on time.
Yep.
I always leave myself idiot time.
And it may not just be you that's the idiot, but maybe the people around you.
That's true. There's plenty of idiocy to go around.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I guess that's enough random vamping. We've got quite a bit of listener feedback this week because I dedicated last week to a particular topic. So we have a bevy of it here, which is great. We love having lots of listener feedback. And this isn't all of it. I have more for the next show. But we'll jump in. He says it's not a bug, it's a feature. Remember I was talking last week about not being able to move between different networks with the same SSID, and how I said that shouldn't be. The whole point of SSIDs was to be able to move from one network to another without reconfiguring. Damon has a comment on that. It says, hi all, I think I know the problem is Mark having with his Wi-Fi since changing his router. I'm pretty sure the connection issue is because the MAC address is changing. I've noticed that Windows will look for an SSID, as will Android, but some of the Wi-Fi managers that I've used under Linux check the MAC address against the SSID, unless configured not to. So I assume it's a security feature. Given Hack5 selling their pineapples, which spoof Wi-Fi access point SSIDs, it seems reasonable that one way to thwart a device that says it's whatever your SSID your device is asking to check for a MAC address. WICD allows you to configure your Wi-Fi and check a box that will apply the settings based on SSID only. I've seen similar options on other network software on Linux as well, but I don't remember the particulars. As always, I enjoy. Keep up the great work. So that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, my Linux box didn't have a problem with it. My Windows boxes did. But the logic stands to reason to some degree. If it's an access point, a MAC address you've never seen before, make somebody re-authenticate. I'm okay with that, except that nobody's going to say, oh, no, this is a problem. They're just going to say, why do I have to enter my password again?
Right.
So if that's a security feature, it's only a security feature for a very small percentage of knowledgeable people.
Of us neckbeards.
Right.
And command line guys.
Because
the weirdos.
I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Now, however, had this happened and I hadn't made any hardware changes, I might have gone, oh, wait a minute. But maybe not. I probably just would have done this darn thing and re-authenticated and gone on with my life. Which is exactly what I would do if Darren Kitchens was walking around my neighborhood with a Wi-Fi pineapple. I would give him my world, because as soon as something went wrong, I'd just go and I'd re-enter the credentials and go on with my life, and he would own me.
There you go.
That wouldn't happen to me because I would have to see somebody walking around the outside of my house, and I would say, who are you? Get off my lawn.
I knew a guy, I won't say his name because I'm scared of him, who had sort of advanced notice features on his large property. Let's just say he knew you were there before you rang his doorbell. And he was the kind of guy that if he didn't like what he saw, you wouldn't make it to the doorbell. Those people exist.
Yeah, I could think of a couple people that I know that either are on their way to being that type of person, or are that way already.
Yeah, Montana, Texas, the wide open spaces country is where you're going to find those people.
Yeah, with the supposedly wildlife cameras hooked up in places that don't point at wildlife. Yeah.
There's not a deer feeder within 100 miles of here. What are you looking at?
Yep.
Bigfoot. Bigfoot,
Yeah,
that's it.
Bigfoot.
If you're walking around the country and you hear banjos playing, you should probably backtrack really fast.
You sure do got a pretty mouth. All right.
I'm gonna make a comment though, real quick about his thoughts there about the SSID in the Mac. And yeah, that makes sense when you're when you're talking about one SSID in one Mac. But what about those locations that have, like AeroHive or any of those mesh networks? Because those don't all have separate MAC IDs. They all have unique MAC IDs on the access points. So why does it transfer over cleanly on those, but not on what you did, Mark?
I don't know.
That's the only monkey wrench I'll throw in that one.
Maybe it's because they're all from the same manufacturer, so like the first octet are the same. And
or you have even an AeroHive that's a mesh network. You have a controller, so you have a governing logic over all the mesh, and so then it would see, and it's usually an enterprise type setting. So.
Yeah. So let's talk more about stuff we don't know about. Mark, the Arch user, defends Vim.
Aha!
Of course.
Thank you, Mark.
He says, I enjoyed your last show, but I have to take exception with the comments on Vim. I've used Vim for a year or two, and yes, the learning curve is steep, but Vim Tutor was quite helpful in learning the basics. A couple of other programs, namely eLinks and Tmux, help greatly with the more obscure commands. Tmux is a terminal multiplexer for when you're, and eLinks is a terminal-based web browser. This combination has gotten me out of a few problems. On a side note, I'm also a Mutt user and use Arch too. So, Mark, you just made my point for me. Thank you. You had to use 2 devices and reference materials to use a command line editor. Thank you for proving my point.
But those are really good tools, and if you want to learn how to use Vim, there you go.
Chris, you said if you want to learn how to use Vim.
Well,
that makes my point for me.
But I'm bowing down because everybody doesn't want to be in the command line. So if you want to learn Vim, and because of the fact that you might get locked out of things, or I don't know, X crashing, and you have to, rebuild your X server configuration 3-4 times a day because you're tinkering. I have no idea why that would be a problem.
So Vim is a flavor of Vi, and Vi is pretty much everywhere you want to be. Anytime you drop down to a command shell, you can type the letters VI and get something. So yes, it is useful to know it, but can't we come up with something better? That's one of my big problems with open source and the Linux community in general, is once we have a tool, the neckbeards go, yeah, well, we've already got that. There's no really need to work on anything else. We've got Vim. Vim is great. But Vim isn't great. Vim sucks giant rocks. But we live with it because it works. There's this huge market out there for somebody to write a simple, menued, ASCII-based text editor that any monkey can use. But the idea is monkeys don't need to be in the command line, so we shouldn't make it. And I just think that's wrong.
That's right.
I don't know. I could just see, somebody could take your same argument and apply it to a whole operating system. Why isn't there more choice?
It's called Windows. Somebody did apply my argument to an operating system, and they made Windows, and it's so simple a monkey could use it. And that's not a bad thing.
Well,
okay.
Not all the time.
I mean, yes, you can get yourself in trouble. That's true, but you can certainly get yourself in trouble using Vi and not knowing what you're doing, too.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow. I really can't defend that, but I will say that it's worth learning. We'll just go there. It's worth learning.
Put my grumpy pants on today and didn't even know it. I'm gonna have to.
I guess.
I'm gonna have to label these grumpy pants and not put them on before. Jeff,
you're soapbox dancing again.
Jeff writes in and offers some advice to Joe, who's become pretty much a co-host here with his recent feedback about his network. Jeff says, your podcast has made it to the top of my rotation in my list, and I've utilized a lot of your suggestions in my home network. I built a Boris box with pfSense. Well, actually, it's a vBoris box since it runs on an ESX host. A Plex server, a FreeNAS NAS, and just recently installed an OB phone box. All of them are working great. That's great. That makes my heart feel good, Jeff. I do have one piece of advice to the listener who wants to build a NAS and Plex. Don't put them on the same box, especially if you have a small CPU, and especially if you want to stream high-quality video. That's 2 especiallys in one sentence. I installed the Plex plugin for FreeNAS on my Atom processor nearly keeled over. I was unable to transcode anything over 2 megabit bitrate without it buffering every 5 to 10 seconds. I installed Plex onto a virtual machine on ESX, and the buffering went away. Also, for his sanity, I don't recommend virtualizing FreeNAS. Although the FreeNAS is free, they offer free support, but the overlords that run the forums will publicly flog you if you mention virtualizing their product. Feel free to share this with the other guys, the email, and you can keep. I didn't delete what I was supposed to delete there. Again, thanks for a good show.
I
Jeff,
didn't know FreeNAS is so angry about virtualizing.
Yeah, well, I can sort of I can sort of understand that, because if you're trying to virtualize your storage, that's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
And so maybe they have so much experience with people trying to virtualize storage that they can't the virtualizing the controller on physical storage. And I guess a lot of people who are noobs wouldn't know the difference anyway. Don't ever virtualize storage. We've said that before. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Use real storage and a virtual machine to access real storage. But his point about not installing the Plex plugin is interesting. I hadn't thought about it. But a lot of NASs, if you buy like a Buffalo NAS or whatever, they're going to be running a very low-powered processor because you don't need much to be a NAS. And then you throw Plex in there, and Plex will suck up every bit of processing and memory resources it can get by design. That's what it's designed to do.
Yep. And then they'll kill it.
Yeah, so I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. Whatever your name is, I just forgot. Jeff. Yes. So there you go. And Jeff wrote this email on the end of a donation, and that's the part that I forgot to delete. I don't like to publicly announce the fact that people make donations. Jeff, you're awesome. Thank you for doing it. But his comment was good without the fact that he gave me money. It's better because he gave him no. I'm going on. And Jim says that we overreacted to shell shock. The subject of his message was "The sky is falling. The sky is falling." He says, "Hi guys, before you get your panties in a twist about that $30 Linksys box, check with Bradley Kuhn and all the lawsuits he did about Busy Bro." Well, Bradley's on my speed dial. I talked to him just the other day. I don't know who this guy is. And all the lawsuits he did about BusyBox. Embedded Linux consists of a kernel, a couple of drivers, and BusyBox. And no, BusyBox is not Bash and doesn't have the same vulnerabilities. Jim. All right, you're right, Jim. A lot of systems, particularly ARM-based systems, do run a very stripped-down kernel / stack, and that's about it. And BusyBox is a very popular one. BusyBox is on my Pogo plug, for example. Right. That's running like a 400 megahertz Atom processor. But there's also a lot of hardware out there that is beefier than it needs to be. For example, I bought a while back some Linux Lexmark printers that ran a Linux kernel on a gigahertz processor with 8 megs of RAM. You can do a lot on a gigahertz processor with 8 megs of RAM. And I don't know if they had a full-on Linux installation or not, but I suspect that the printer guys weren't interested in building a tight, button-down, very secure operating system to stick in their printer. I'm sure they went and grabbed something off the shelf, shoved it in, and called it good. And I think there are probably several million devices in the world like that. I would love to be wrong about that, but I don't think I am.
See, I just did a quick little lookup on a couple of sites that I track for exploits, and for like anybody who's replaced their firmware on those Linksys boxes with DDWRT, according to the write-down of it, it says that by default you would not be a target for shell shock, but if you've installed some of the plugins that bring Bash with them, then you're stuck. So, yeah, by default, some of those, embedded systems may not be targetable. But if you brought in a bunch of extra bits and pieces for plugins, if you had a FTP system you installed onto your embedded system has Bash built into it, you're now affected by shell shock. So, yes, you're probably right, Jim. We probably are a little overreacting, but it's a big enough deal to make everybody aware, just to be so everyone can double check their stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not known for being one who overreacts. If anything, I tend to underreact. I rant a lot, but when I actually take action, I tend to be as minimalist as I can. I don't like to react on what I think might happen. I want to react on what is really happening. But this one figuratively scares the pants off of me. I'm wearing pants, so it's not literally. But it's a scary, scary thing because it's been. Here's what bothers me the most. It's been around for 2 decades or more, and it was just made public. That doesn't mean that people just now know about it. And
Right.
and once people started looking for it, they were finding it everywhere. Now, does that mean that hackers got on it, crammed stuff together? I know it's already in, like Metasploit and things like that. Did it just get out there that fast, or was it already out there when we started looking for it? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a big deal, and it's scary to me.
There's a lot of people that are scared about it. A lot of the different places that I look for security news, Sophos for being one of them, they're panicked about it. There's some places that are saying this is what you need, this is what you need to take care of, blah blah blah. The Sophos write-up is a really good one. They usually have great write-ups over there at nakedsecurity.sophos. And the one that they wrote up for the shell shock is a good one. If you need to look into it and see what could be possible, take a look.
And that jumps us right into our first news story of the week, a ZDNet article, The Shell Shock FAQ. Here's what you really need to know.
It's another good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Seth, you want to tell us about that?
Well, I mean, I was just putting it in here because we did talk about it last week, and we really didn't have any answers. So, this is one of those things where I think pretty much the whole article is good. Just, go to our website, click on the link, and take a look at it because it does a really good job of breaking down, who it is, who's vulnerable, and kind of some of the steps you can take about it.
Here's what I like in this list. How are people exploiting it? Web servers, all right, that's a given. DHCP servers.
Yep, or the clients, not the servers, the clients.
Right, so it's not uncommon for DHCP to call the shell to do various things. If your shell is compromised, there you go. SSH, that's a little obvious. You got to connect into it. Anytime you're connecting, that's good. That's a red flag.
And then the biggest one that I think is the biggest vulnerability of the whole article.
CUPS.
The common
Unix printing system. So most of us don't interact with CUPS. We interact with some GUI built on top of CUPS. But if you've got a printer installed on your system, it's probably using CUPS. And it's it's scripting, it's built right in there. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. The other one that's a big factor is, like it says in the article, it says browser plugins or anything that's using any of the scripting languages, because you can just call out, any of the Python, that you can just do a call to the terminal.
Yeah.
And then you are a system when you do that call. So even browser plugins or some basic little widget program that you downloaded from the website that's written in Python or Perl can call to the shell without you knowing.
Yeah, so Jim, if you're not scared, then good. You're a better man than I am, because I'm scared. Not that there's anything I do about it, right? So I'm not. There's a difference between being cautiously frightened and worried. Scared isn't the right word. Concerned, and panicking. I'm not unplugging. I'm still doing this show on a Linux box. I still have Linux all over my house and my Android phones and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not panicking to the point of running to my storm shelter or my fallout bunker. But it is something that has me on heightened awareness. I'm much more careful now about what I do and systems I link to until we can kind of get some kind of handle on this thing. And we may never be able to get a handle on it. That's my biggest concern. It is so widespread and so entrenched that we may never truly get a handle on it. It may be like NIMDA or Code Red. It's just hanging out there for decades, and we just have to be aware of it, but there's nothing we can do about it. And that's why it concerns me. It's a big deal. And also the precedence it sets, that people are now starting to look at these old code bases, and we weren't as security conscious back in that day because it never. Email, for example. Email assumes everything you send is truthful. This email, who's this email from? it's from Joe at Microsoft.com. Okay, I believe you. I'm not going to run any checks on that. I trust you. And I want to send it to Joe's mom at CNET.com. Okay, fine. I'm going to do with that. And I have an attachment that's just text. Don't bother looking at it. Okay, I won't. And it sends it on. That's a basic conversation between two mail servers. Yeah. Well, now we know that every step along the way that could be exploited. But when it was designed, nobody even thought about that. And so that's one of the reasons it's so hard to get rid of spam and so hard to crack down on mail viruses and things like that, because the system wasn't built for it. What else are we going to find where the system was built inherently trusting in what has become an untrustworthy environment?
DNS.
DNS is,
yeah. Yep, that's another one that people don't really pay much attention to. But DNS, you can be taking all sorts of craziness with DNS.
Yeah, when we've been trying to do DNS security for a decade now.
And it's not there.
It's not entrenched yet because there's so much inertia just to stay with what works, what we know works. If you implement something new, it could break it. And DNS is mission critical. If you don't know what DNS is, if you're a grandma listening, hi grandma. DNS is there's no such site as Disney.com. It's 136.57.13.95. But humans are really bad at remembering groups of 4 triple-digit numbers. So the DNS was invented so that we can give human-readable names, Microsoft.com, and it will go to the right set of numbers. So it's essentially a big phone directory of names and numbers. Well, there's all kinds of ways that can be hacked. Like, for example, you think you're going to Microsoft.com, and you go to bobsterriblesite.com. And if the DNS system redirects you without your knowledge, there is nothing you can do about it. You can't know it. Because all of our security, SSL, all that stuff is based on correctly connecting to the right thing and verifying that you are who you say you are. So yeah, that's a thing that's out there, and people have been worried about it for a while. Fortunately, the distributed nature of it makes it a little harder to abuse because there's so many DNS servers that it's hard to take over all of them.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments before we move along?
I think we're good.
Okay. So moving off of Shell Shock for a while, we need to remind you once again, Ohio Linux Fest is coming.
Yes.
I want one of their T-shirts.
You
know what I mean? I want one. Those are nice T-shirts. I like the big penguin.
Yeah, they look pretty good. And you can actually have them delivered. So if you go to the website, you can get it delivered to your home. It's actually the top thing on their website now. But yeah, it's the 12th annual Ohio Linux Fest, October 24th through the 26th in the Greater Columbus Convention Center that's in downtown Ohio. They have some really cool speakers, things ranging from, I think their definition of beginning Linux person and our definition of beginning Linux person, not a lot of overlap there. But from the intermediate level person to the neckbeard trainers, there's something for everyone at Ohio Linux Fest. So
I like how they put in there though the idea of what level that these could be considered. Are they considered intermediate level or beginner or advanced? I like how they put that in there because if you don't, if you've never been to Ohio before in this to one of these Linux fests and you're a new person, man, could you imagine if your new person sat down in a room with the kernel development team?
All right, but how to learn and develop in ColdFusion with completely open source virtual machine running from VirtualBox on a micro distribution of Linux is not something I would call beginner level material.
Yeah, about that. I made my stand on that last week. I'm not going to jump on it again, but I think it shows that this show needs to be out there, reminding people what a beginner actually is.
Well, I guess maybe if they had a noob level below beginner, I wouldn't feel bad about their beginner. But they need to have something that says, we assume you're at least on the ladder before you come here. We're not rung one. So
there have been a few really good video games based on movies. Not many, but a few. There has
Do you mean
never
movies
been
based on video games.
video games based on movies.
Okay.
There has
yeah.
never been a good movie based on a video game. It's never happened. Mario
Double
Brothers?
Dragon?
No. Double Dragon? No. Street Fighter? No.
No.
Well, here we go
Battleship.
again. Battleship. G.I. Joe, it's not even a video game, but it was terrible. So here we go again with Tetris, the movie.
So what? It's we falling blocks from the sky.
So it's like a disaster film, right? Only instead of tornadoes flaming and throwing sharks at you, it's going to be random shapes falling from the sky, and your only choice is to arrange them in just the right order so that they disappear.
You know, I have no idea what this movie is going to be, but go to our website, click on the link, and watch the fan-made trailers for the Tetris movie because they are so funny. They're just funny.
No
but yeah,
cast.
we had to talk about this.
No cast, crew, production date, or release date have been determined. No writer has been named, but it's definitely a real thing. Brought from the same people who brought you Mortal Kombat and the sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Oh, good lord.
Yeah, you know the cool thing about this. What is Asylum's version going to be?
Coming soon to Sci-Fi, the
Class.
Tetris movie. Oh,
No, they can't use Tetris because it's
yeah.
use like
Shapes.
It'll be yeah. Falling shapes. Run for your lives.
Next week, 9 Central.
Would-
Shapes.
You would watch it. You know you would.
Oh, yeah. It will make our bad movie list. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put it on there before it's even made. I'm that confident about it.
Oh. I couldn't. I could not believe I ran across this story. But yeah, Tetris movie coming soon to a video discount bin near you.
Oh, okay. So Davy Jones in the chat room says that Tomb Raider was really good. Yeah.
The first one.
About that.
I don't know if we could call that based on the video game.
That there were attractive people in it running. So that's good Baywatch style. Otherwise, not so much.
Yeah. I thought the first one was okay.
Okay. So, like I said, there's never been a good movie based on a video game. It's never happened. However, have you ever been watching a movie? It's happened to me several times, where you're watching the movie and you say to yourself, that scene's only in there so they can put it in the video game. There's a scene in Kung Fu Panda 2 where they're in the dragon thing going downtown, and the dragon is like eating wolves and spitting them out. And as I was watching this, I said to my wife, that's only in there so they could make the video game of it. That's just one example. I've seen that many times. And, you know, Battleship, for example, that whole scene was there just so they could have the name from Mattel, because it made
Right.
no sense. It didn't help the plot. It didn't hurt the plot. But it was pointless. But they had to come up with some reason to have a grid that they were following and launching rockets at.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Courtesy of Jeff, one of our listeners, a Canadian school makes the switch from Windows to Ubuntu and says they will save about $15,000.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's not small, but it's not life-changing either. I mean, $15,000 to a school budget is not huge, but
Well, depending on the school district, that could be a life-saving thing. That's the difference between having, janitors or not for a school year.
That would pay for, I don't know, 1/10 of the amount of paper an average teacher prints a year.
it
So-
might, I mean, realistically, it's going to pay for the lunch lady, or a janitor. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's a step in the right direction. And this is in Montreal, A representative from the school board of Montreal contacted the Lubuntu community with a simple problem. The school had an easy choice to make: either upgrade the hardware or to get Lubuntu. So they were trying to to get more life out of their old computers. And here's my problem with this line of thinking. They have now equated Lubuntu with old hardware. And I made that same mistake when I was in schools. I put that in the minds of my teachers and of my administration. Ubuntu or Linux is good for old crap. And then when we had some money and we didn't need the old crap anymore, they didn't want Linux anymore. So that's an unfortunate mindset that I'm afraid that Montreal is creating here, and one that I myself did.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the Lubuntu team. They do a really great job with their CDs. Their distro is rock solid. Every time I've played with it, I'm really impressed with it every time.
Yeah, and it's very Windowsy. I mean, if you're a Windows user, you're going to be familiar and comfortable with Lubuntu.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, good. I'm afraid, afraid's not the word. It concerns me when people make the right choice for the wrong reasons, because then later when those wrong reasons go away, they have no reason to stick with that choice.
Yeah. But it's a typical problem that people have whenever they're making the switch to Linux when it comes to, because they're trying to save money.
Yeah, well, and the forced upgrade from XP to Vista to 7 or 9 or whatever, when XP died and you had to go somewhere and you couldn't put the modern operating system on your hardware, you got to go somewhere. You got to buy new hardware to get new software, or you got to look elsewhere from Windows. Those are your two choices. And so I think a lot of people are going to do this, but I'm afraid that it's just going... I keep using the word afraid tonight. I'm concerned that it's just going to be a stopgap. And I want Linux to be more than a stopgap. I want it to be a real thing that people treat seriously and not just as a Band-Aid solution until you can get rid of that crazy Ubuntu stuff and get back to good old Windows.
Right.
Because, I experienced that in my career. That's exactly what happened. Once we got over the hump and we got a little more cash, Linux went away. And it didn't matter how many well-reasoned arguments I made. The boss said, well, we have the money for Windows now, we're going to get Windows. And
sucks when that happens.
There it was. So all my efforts, not all of them, but a lot of them went away. Terrible transition. Facebook is now getting into the ad game, a la Google.
Again.
Yeah, well, now this isn't just putting ads places. This is being the ad service.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basic. Well, and even a long time ago, Facebook would have a shadow profile on you even if you didn't have an account, just because of the cookie tracking they do and monitoring. And so what they've done is they've aggregated all the data now, and now they are packaging you. Again, you moo every time you use Facebook. I moo too. We're a bunch of mooers. And so they've taken that, and now they're packaging you and they're selling you to ads targeted specifically for you. It's like there's always been advertising on the internet, but it's just been, random banners and stuff you've clicked on before. But now Facebook is trying to take how well they think they know you and roll it out, and it's a program called Atlas, and it'll allow marketers to tap its detail knowledge. And here's the thing, it's not like they're giving their knowledge to the marketers, making the marketers come to them, and they're hoarding their knowledge, and just to get more refined on you. So it's one of those things, Google kind of just throw out what they have. Everybody can use it, but Facebook has been notoriously private is the wrong word, but closed on the amount of information they share about you with other people. It's like if you click on a link, like if you do a Google search and you click on a Facebook page for a business, you click on that, you can't see it unless you log in to Facebook first, because they don't want something they're not getting metrics on looking at their stuff. So
I know a lot of people panic when they hear targeted ads specific to me. I want this. I recognize that ads are the way things get done. As I mentioned just recently, ads are the way this show happens. Of course, your donations are great, but I started this whole thing with the mindset of selling ads because I knew that was the revenue that was going to make this possible. If I'm ever going to quit my day job and make this my day job, your donations aren't going to make that happen. I appreciate your donations, but it's never going to be enough. The only way this is ever going to happen is for me to get tier 1 ad revenue coming in.
Yep.
And it's not going to be Linux Academy unless they grow as we grow, which would be great. But it's going to be.
It seems to be.
Yeah, it's going to be Audible. It's going to be Amazon. It's going to be General Electric. It's going to be Tesla. It's got to be those. It's got to be the companies that are already advertising, for whom they can throw $30,000 in an ad campaign to me, and not notice it, whereas $30,000 is huge for me. Right? So that's the way it works. And ads work best for both sides of the party if they're specific to you. So when I'm on Amazon and I'm looking at something, there's that little strip down there at the bottom that says people who bought this also bought this. That's targeting the ad to an interest they know I have. And you know what? It works. I look at I like this. And actually, it's a little cheaper than the thing I just looked at. And then I click that. That's an ad. And it's a good ad because it gave me information I wanted. And it put an advertiser, somebody who paid money, in front of me. That's the idea. I don't want ads for feminine hygiene products. I may live in a house full of 4 girls, and so there's all kinds of data coming out of my IP address that says I would be interested in feminine hygiene products, but I'm not, right? But right now the targeting is so crappy, they don't know that, and I get ads for diapers, and that was fine years ago, but I'm not there anymore. I want ads that are relevant to me. Why is that such a bad thing? If I have to see an ad anyway, I don't care if I never see another Budweiser ad ever again. I don't drink beer. I will not drink beer. I will not drink it on a boat. I will not drink it with a goat. I'm not a beer drinker. Stop showing me beer ads. But if you show me, ads for sci-fi books, okay, that's going to get my attention. If you show me ads for bacon, that's going to get my attention. And so, what's wrong with an ad platform knowing enough about me to give me an ad that I might actually want to see?
Well,
for me,
go ahead, Chris.
I'm gonna say for me, I don't have a big problem with advertisements in general. What I don't like is when they track me to sites that they're not advertising me on. That's where I have the problem, and I don't particularly like if I'm staying on with your Amazon example, Mark. That's fine that they can track me on Amazon and what I'm buying on Amazon and what I'm looking at on Amazon and keep a database of that. But if I jump over to say, Internet Movie Database, and then they track me over there for the movies I'm looking at, okay, yes, I've opted in to have Amazon track me over there, but before I even opted in, they were flowing Amazon ads at me for things, and that bothered me.
Okay,
so
it doesn't bother me because I recognize again that's how things get paid for. Nothing exists without revenue, and that's a problem. That's a concept that many people in the open source community refuse to accept, aka
right.
Stallman. He refuses to accept that nothing exists without a revenue stream. And so I get that. I'm fine with it. And I saw the Minority Report too, and I saw Tom Cruise walk down the aisles and ads fly out holographically directed at him, and that was supposed to be dystopian. The writer was supposed to be painting a grim picture of the future. I saw that and went, cool, I want that, because then that will be people giving me what I want, which is the whole point. I mean, I like it when Amazon just sends me stuff because they know I want it. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but I would like it if they did, right? So that's the thing, Larry Page or Sergey Brin, one of them, I don't remember which, said something like, Google wants to be so good at knowing you, they send you things that they know you were going to buy anyway. And everybody freaked out about that, and I went, yes, that's called the future. That's what I want. I want the world serving me, not me serving the world.
Well, I like the discovery nature of the internet. And for example, I spend a lot of time browsing, and I have a lot of technology sites I go to, and the only reason I go to them is I'm looking for stories for this show. In my free time, I'm not looking for stories for this show, but a site I used to love to go to was MSN, because I went there and it had a bunch of different sections that I could scroll through and look and see, here's what Kim Kardashian's up to. I don't really care about that. Here's what movies are out. They're cool. Here's what's going on in politics. And then I had this wide assortment I could go through. Well, they recently changed their site, and now everything is there because I've clicked on stories off of their site like that before. So I've lost the random nature of discovery on the internet, and they don't know what I like just because I clicked on something before. The reason I clicked on it had nothing to do with the main body of the story, and so now I'm hamstrung from running across something new because these websites think they know me.
Well, you know why that's a problem, Seth? Because they don't have enough information. That's not a problem of them having information. It's because they have incomplete and invalid information. If they knew you from, say, your Facebook activities, they would be able to serve you better stuff. They would know you like random crap, and they'd be able to give it to you. If they knew you, if they could parse this show for your input, the 3 hours a week you put into this show, they would know you so well. They would be able to bring you exactly the stories you're interested in, and they'd be able to say, not only do we think Seth would be interested in this, hey Seth, here's a good story for your link at the end of the Everyday Linux show. That would be based on information you freely give on this show every week, and it would be incredibly useful to you.
But I wouldn't have found it. I don't know. It's just I don't like it. I don't mind ads. I like the random nature of them. So I'm a different person. The fact that I don't like it means society will gobble it up. I understand that, but doggone it, I hate it.
It's just like, it's like if the only hammer you ever had was that little plastic toy hammer that came in your, Bob the Builder box, you would think a hammer is a terrible tool. But if you ever had a really good professional grade roofing hammer, you would think every problem is a nail because this is the best tool ever. And so we look at ads and we think they're terrible because we've had bad ads. Well, the technology is bad. Television, it's the worst possible example of ads. They just throw things out based on who they think might. I mean, I can tell you when I'm watching television with my wife, I will tell her they expect mothers under the age of 40 with toddlers between the ages of 6 and 12, well, toddlers, but 6 months and 3 years old, to be watching the show based on this ad. And we're not that. We just happen to like the same show on the Food Network. Right? So that's a bad ad. And their demographics are wrong. With all the research they've done, they missed it in our case. And they've shown us an ad for Fisher-Price that we will never have any purpose to use. That's a bad ad. It didn't work for them, and it doesn't work for us. I wouldn't skip through commercials if they were all Super Bowl commercials, because they spend so much money on those. They make them general mass appeal. They make them witty. They make them clever, and they give them a message. And that's the reason everybody watches ads on the Super Bowl, even if they didn't watch the Super Bowl, because the best work went into those ads. The trouble is the other 364 days a year, where they didn't put all those effort into those ads.
I can follow your point, Mark. I'm not saying that your part isn't valid, man. It's just I don't like being. I wouldn't mind being ads given to me that are contextual, if it's contextual on the sites that I want it to be contextual.
Yeah. You want control, and I understand that. I understand the opt-out process. You're bothered that you not only did you not opt in, you can't opt out. I get that.
Exactly. That's where I'm at. I don't have a problem, and I opt in a lot of sites. Like I said with the Internet Movie Database, I've opted in to let Amazon track me over there. I sign in with Amazon all the time. I sign into places with my Google credentials all the time. So give me the options to opt in and opt out when I can and I will. And I think a lot of people would. You hit your Targets or your Amazon or whatever, and they say, "Hey, do you want to log in with Facebook here?" I bet you that more people would be going, "Oh yeah, yes, log me in with Facebook, so that I can get contextual ads."
Yeah, that's the thing. I think they need to give you a reason to. Right now, it's convenient. You can just click this button and log in.
Yep.
But if people really understood the benefit of it, and it is a benefit, despite what the neckbeards may say, better ads is a good thing for everybody. The answer isn't to make ads go away. The answer isn't to block ads. The answer is to make the ads so good that you want to watch them.
Or give them the options to watch them.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have a problem on YouTube or Amazon or or not Amazon, but Hulu, where the Hulu doesn't give you the option to opt out of those ads, but they do give you the option you don't, and so then it becomes a contextual based on what you're giving it. You're feeding the machine some information so the machine can give you what you want. I like that model better than just random garbage, because then I can opt into that change.
But the thing is, random garbage is cheap and efficient. That's why spammers send spam, because random garbage have you looked at your spam folder recently? Everybody pause the show right now and go look at your spam folder. If you're driving, you can do this later. Just look at it. I'm going to make a guess that 90% of what's in your spam, not even words. And even if you wanted to buy, if you clicked every message in your spam and said, "I'm going to buy from everything that's here," I'd bet 80% of it you couldn't buy from if you wanted to. It's a broken link or not a link. But they've gone through such weird lengths to try to get past spam filters, which don't work because it's in your spam folder, that they're just throwing word salad at you that's not even English or French or Spanish. It's just not any language. And the words that are in English don't make sense. It's an excerpt from some book. And then when you click it, it goes to a website that you couldn't even pay for if you wanted to, because the payment system has been taken offline. The spam doesn't work, yet it's still out there because it's cheap and easy.
Yep.
We need to find ways to make it better so that but we need a symbiotic payment system, a symbiotic advertising system.
Interesting.
Not a parasitic one.
Well, and that would be true with my opt-in option.
Right.
If you were given the option to opt into contextual ads, it would we'd be feeding off of each other instead of you just being a parasite. So ad vendors out there, this is your notice.
So I believe that the ads that we do for the Linux Academy benefit the audience. I really believe that, because they're the kind of people, they sell the service that the kind of people who listen to this show need and want. And that's been validated by the feedback that I've gotten from listeners. They're saying, "Hey, I really love the Linux Academy. You guys turned me on to it. I checked it out. I really liked it." Or, "I've been meaning to do that. I keep hearing you rave about it. I need to check into it. It sounds interesting to me." These are good feedback. These are good things. That means that it's advertiser with the right property, and we're feeding each other. They're growing, and we're feeding each other, and that's a good thing. So naturally, I have to do a Linux Academy ad right now. LinuxAcademy.com is where you can go to learn how to be a Linux administrator, step by step. They take you from being a novice on the first rung of the ladder, maybe the second rung, to use Seth's analogy. You can't just be a total I don't know anything about technology. You have to be able to at least find a website and watch a video. If you can do that, and you're not not brain dead, you can learn from the Linux Academy, because they make it so easy. Not only easy, but effective. hundreds of videos now, well over 200, that each video takes you through a simple process. They break everything down and they make the complex simple by making it small, and it's for the blip-vert generation. Max Headroom reference there. They've made things small so that you can watch it in bites. And then where you can have up to 4 different Linux servers running at the same time live and communicating with each other with different public IP addresses, and you can tag them so that they make sense to you, and have this really amazing virtual server system in this housed lab environment. It's safe. If you hose one, you just delete it and start over again. It's super easy. It's in the Amazon cloud system, so it's lightning fast. So you have things. You learn by breaking stuff, people. So don't be afraid to break things. They've given you a rubber room with glass utensils where you can break everything you want without hurting yourself. And then as you're watching the videos and testing in the virtual machines, you also have the the written portion and the PDF study guides that are time coded to the video that you're watching, so that you know at 4 minutes and 19 seconds they started talking about this. I was a little rough on this. When I went over to the lab experience, I melted my machine, so I probably didn't actually know what I was doing. Let me go back to 4 minutes and 19 seconds and try that again and read through this PDF while I'm at it. They have all of this in a lesson browser function that tracks what you've done and what you haven't done. It tracks your quizzes. Did I mention quizzes? Oh yeah, there are quizzes, so that you can test your knowledge. Now that you've done it, once you've watched it, you can go and see how well you're going to do on a test. Because the whole point of this is to take you to certification. Certification is all about passing a test. Unlike some places, they don't teach you to pass a test. They teach you the stuff you need to know so that you can pass any test given you. That's the difference between LinuxAcademy.com and some other boot camp sites. Passing the test is the end result of learning the material. It is not the goal for the whole site. They're not set up so that you can pass a test whether you know things or not. There aren't quizzes on there on best test-taking techniques. The quizzes are about, do you know the stuff that you learned? Can you really administer a Linux server? And their newest feature that they just rolled out is their learning plan system, where you tell them when you're available. Oh no, you're giving it information. Yeah, you tell that when you're available, how many hours a day, how many days a week, which days of the week, and what you want to accomplish. And it takes their database of information, and it fills that into your schedule and says that here's your plan. Monday you do this, Tuesday you do this. We expect you to spend X amount of time watching videos, X amount of time doing lab work, and X amount of time reading on your own. Then when you're done, at the end of this time, when it's all scheduled out, you're ready to go. You're ready to take that practice exam and see if you can pass it. And if you've done your homework and you've learned, you will pass it. You get this for a bargain price of $25 a month. Now that's a bargain. But that's also the most you can pay. If you want to buy 3 months, purchase a quarter. It's only $20 a month. If you want to, you've tried it out for a while. I really recommend you try it out for a month or two. See if you like it. Then when you're ready to dive in, buy it annually. $199. That's less than $17 a month for all of this stuff that I just told you. Not only is there so much stuff there, but it's growing every day. They're adding new stuff, not just new videos. They're not just throwing more videos out there, but like this whole lab upgrade. That just happened a couple of weeks ago. Boom, here you go. This whole learning plan thing. That just happened recently. Boom, here you go. There's boom, here you go. It's happening all the time. It's not just new videos. It's new entire ways of doing things. And they haven't raised their prices for people. They've just thrown it out there and said, here's new stuff for the same price you've been paying. That's why we think LinuxAcademy.com is a great ad for us to read on this show. And when you go, use the code EverydayLinux in the sign-up box to let them know that we sent you. And moving right along, BlackBerry is still a thing.
It's still not dead. Come on. We need to kill BlackBerry already. Double tap.
I love BlackBerry. I hope they make a comeback. But they're going to have to get exponentially better than they ever have been to be able to compete with even the lowest end Android device.
Yeah, but I think the problem. I mean, the mobile market is so huge now that you can be a small player and still make a lot of money. They actually recorded a gross profit from their handset operation. They still had an overall loss, but they're not losing billions a quarter. So it looks like they've kind of turned things around and are on the road to long-term viability.
Yeah, and so their newest device that they've just launched, I'm not sure if it's available yet. The Black has a physical keyboard. Yay, BlackBerry. They've always been big on their physical keyboards. But it's a physical keyboard with swipe capabilities, with gestures. So I'm not sure I'm getting that. The whole point of the gesture-based keyboard was to fill in the shortcomings of not having a physical keyboard. But this new BlackBerry device is going to have a physical keyboard with gesture capacity.
That's interesting.
But because the keyboard takes up a big chunk of space, to give you the same screen size you would have on an iPhone, the device has to be bigger so that you can have the physical keyboard there. So I'm not sure I'm sold on it, but in this world of people holding giant pieces of glass up to their head to make phone calls, it's not out of character.
And it's still funny.
There's this guy I go to church with. He's 6'7", maybe. I mean, I'm a big guy, and I look up to him. He may be 6'8". He's a big, tall dude, and he's got a Galaxy Note 2, I think it is. Giant phone, but when he holds it, it looks like an iPhone 4. It just fits in his hand nicely, and it doesn't look like a big deal. So apparently, everybody, Apple, Samsung, BlackBerry, expect the world to be giants in the near future.
Maybe. Doubt it, but okay.
I know I would rather have a larger phablet than the standard size smartphone.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a 5-inch phone, and that's big. But the new iPhone Plus is 5.7, I think, maybe 5.9. Like the expected Moto Nex, the next Nexus 6 or whatever, is supposed to be a 6 or even a 6.5-inch screen. So we're going that way, and I'm okay with it. Doesn't bother me to put an extra hand on it once in a while. And I think most people, once they move, like I still have it here beside me, my 3.5-inch Android device before I moved up to the big boys. And I think most people, at very first I was like, "Woo, I don't know that I can use this thing." But after a couple of weeks, it was fine. And now I go back to the little one. It's like, oh, it's so cute. This tiny little 3.5 screen. It's like a baby bottle. Oh, so we're gonna get used to it.
I don't know. One thing that I'm weirded out about the new BlackBerry is how it's basically a square.
Right.
That's got me kind of weirded out when I looked at that last time.
It's square, but because the screen takes up it's its own thing. So that's going to make watching videos a little weird on it. And you'll never have to turn your phone sideways, I guess, because it's already sideways.
Yeah, it's a real square. So, there is no long way. It's just that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all played that game of somebody sends you a picture that was taken in landscape view of a portrait object, and you're trying to chase your phone around as you're spinning it, trying to get it right. Yep. And then finally you figure if you hold it just like that and lean it upside down or something. Yeah, tilt your head. Turn the phone sideways. We take every picture in landscape mode. Just do it. Every picture you take, turn the phone sideways. The world will thank you for it.
Yeah, no more long videos.
I am guilty of the long video. I have done that. And afterwards, when I was watching it back, I was like, what the heck was I doing? No. Okay. And on the subject of phones, phoning home is not just for ET anymore.
Yes, there was an issue, and I just wanted to throw this story out there just to kind of remind people that, these smartphones are really more like the agreement to give a flashlight, fart, smiley face
Of
app out
course.
there, carte blanche to your system. I have the right to drain your bank account up to 5 times a month. Do you agree? Yes. Okay. Fine. Whatever. But there was an issue, and of course, there's mainland China, and then there's Taiwan, the Republic of China, and there's a little tension between those two countries. There's actually a Chinese handset maker that one of the ways they get around the texting thing is all text messages are transmitted to their server and they're routed out over data. And, people didn't realize all the information that was being sent back to the servers. Well, if you're going to text people, then obviously the servers would have to know the address that you're texting to. So it's just one of those things. Your phones give out a lot of information. Your location is given out. If you have GPS turned on, even if it's not, it's on the cell tower. The contents of your whatever, depending on the agreements for all of the permissions you have to accept, which is one of the reasons I find myself not liking smartphones more and more, because I went to install Audacity on my Android tablet, and it was like, you have to give permission for this. I was like, no, I don't have to. I can just use because, and again, they write those because the advertising platform they're using in some point might want to run an ad based on that, and I understand all that, but you should just take a few moments and try to realize what information your phone is sending out so you won't be surprised about it later. And if you agree, if you think this is a good trade-off, like me, I'm a private person. It's like, I don't want you to know that I sit at home in my room and play solitaire. That's my personal decision. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just wasting my life away playing cards on the computer. But I don't want people to know that unless I choose to tell them. So if you're okay with what your phone is giving out, but just know so you won't be caught off guard later on.
And, if you're not careful, you may end up literally signing away your firstborn child by clicking I agree.
I thought this was funny. There was a place in Britain, and they were just like, how stupid are people? And so they set up this free Wi-Fi that you had to accept the agreement to take it, and it was called the Herod Clause. Let me see. I had it before.
The security firm F-Secure set up a free Wi-Fi hotspot in downtown London. And like everybody who's ever signed up for a hotel Wi-Fi or a coffee shop Wi-Fi, you have to click I agree to the terms of service. And one of the terms in there was you have to give up your firstborn son, quote, for the recipient agreed to sign the firstborn child to us for the duration of eternity. 6 people said, yeah, okay, I'm good with that.
That just is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
So F-Secure says, since this was just an experiment, quote, we will be returning to the children to their parents. So that's good news.
But yeah, it's like it's just like you were talking about earlier. You just re-enter your password and go. Leave me alone. I'm too busy. I don't have time to read this thing that, I might, while I'm here, I might go online and pay my bill or buy something with PayPal, and I'll hold my phone up and do this so nobody can tell what my digit is, but I'll just click and agree. I don't know where I'm sending this information to, but
yeah.
I just thought this was kind of funny and sad, and it's kind of a sign of the time.
Of course, it's a completely unenforceable thing, and this would never happen. And maybe somebody who read it even saw it said, that's unenforceable. It's against law in every country. But it illustrates the point that the I have read and agreed to the terms of service is the biggest, most common lie ever told on the internet. I have told that lie hundreds of times. I have installed various Windows applications tens of thousands of times over the years of my career. Every time I've clicked the I've read and agree button, I have never read the Microsoft EULA. Ever.
How dare you?
So I have perjured myself on the order of 50,000 times.
At least.
There was a website back before programs like Malwarebytes was so good at removing spyware and malware off of your system, and you had to go through and see what they were and get them off manually. I think it was spywarewarrior.com, or I don't remember the exact name of the site, but he used to install all these bogus applications and see what they did. Well, one time I read a note, he's like, I was unable to install this application because part of the EULA said that you were not employed with, associated with, or in any way affiliated with this forum, and it mentioned them by name. So, because he did such a good job of saying, you have to go, this is what you do to get rid of it, blah, blah, and it was just kind of funny, because he read the EULA, he couldn't report on how to clean your machine of that stuff, so.
Interesting.
I'm one of those annoying guys that I have two policies. If it costs more than $1,000, I don't make the decision in a 24-hour time frame. I will spend a minimum of 48 hours to make any decision that costs more than $1,000. And two, anything that costs more than $1,000, I will read every word of the contract given me. So when I buy a car, when I buy a house, anything like that, I sit there. I'm that guy who sits there with the salesman drumming on the desk and reads every word of the contract before I sign it. I've never found anything there, but you never know. So
right.
I do that.
Well, that's why you do it.
Yeah. And when I go to the timeshares and those sort of things, they're always like, "This is a special deal. You can only get it today." Okay, A, that's a lie. I could come in here any day and get the same deal. And B, I don't make decisions in a 24-hour period. I just don't. So every time I've done a test drive, I always tell them that the first thing, I'm not buying a car today. I'm just not. Period. End of discussion. There is nothing you can do. You couldn't hand it to me if you gave it to me for $999, I could buy it today. Otherwise, no. Those two rules, just personal rules I made up for myself, I believe have saved me much anguish over the years.
I'm sure they do.
All right, let's find the next interesting one here. Windows 9 came out, but it wasn't Windows 9. It's Windows 10. But Windows 9 it's actually Windows 7. Which one is it actually?
It's actually Windows 10. Will actually be Windows 10.
Okay.
And here's my thing. All the way up to Windows 3 and then Windows 3.5. You had Windows 4. Okay, everybody remembers Windows NT.
Yeah.
Windows 5 was 2000, and on the consumer side, Mistake Edition. So that made Windows 6 XP. Windows 7 was Vista. Windows 8 was 7, Windows 9 was 8, and so now with 10, that's my theory as to why they're naming this one 10. They are getting back on their correct numbering scheme.
So basically they're admitting that Windows 7 was just Windows Vista fixed.
No, because 5 was 2000,
yeah.
6 was XP, 7 was Vista, and 8 was...
Well, see, it really doesn't work that way because there were two strands for so long there. There was the NT kernel and the 9X kernel.
Right.
And
yep.
So they were parallel. So really, the numbering scheme doesn't work. But you have, like the guy who's come up with the consolidated theory of Pixar, you've come up with a way that Windows 10 is actually Windows 10. But generally speaking, when you move from Windows 8 to the next version of Windows, you kind of expect that to be 9.
Right.
I think that this was more of a marketing thing. Apple has been OS X 10 forever. Microsoft is finally, quote-unquote, catching up with Apple with Windows 10.
Well, it's the whole reason there was an Xbox 2 when there was already a PlayStation 3, because you would think the 3 was greater than the 2.
Right.
And then somebody found a story that talked about how whenever the people were writing their
code
checks to see if it was 95 or 98, they would just do Windows 9 and then blank. And so they had to, this would have failed all those. They're not going to go back and rewrite that legacy code. So that's why they skipped it and made it 10.
Because I just used the phrase 9X. Right, because
Right.
there was 95, there was 95 SR2, there was 98, and then there was 98 SE. So there are actually 4 versions of 9X out there.
Well, there was.
Yeah.
I don't know very many people that are still running it.
Well, I mean, the operating system still exists. It's just not in use very much.
There you go.
But so yeah, if you did Windows 9 and it was a badly written piece of code, yes, this could be caught up in it. But really, I don't think anybody at Microsoft thought they might confuse this for Windows 95. No, this was pure marketing hype. They wanted to get to 10 for whatever reason. 10's a nice round number. I would have expected them to call it something else. Windows Liger, Windows Fire Dragon swooping down from the sky, death from above. Give it a cool, Windows Hodor. Something instead of just jumping to another number.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it is the Apple thing. They don't want to be on 9 when Apple is on 10 because just you have that ingrained 10 is further along than 9. So, it's why there was no Word 4 or 5. It went straight from Word 3 to Word 6 because WordPerfect was on version 6, and they didn't want to be perceived as less than WordPerfect.
Right, because you can't be less than perfect. It's already perfect. You have to be.
Are either of you guys excited at all for the new version of Windows at all?
No.
Woohoo!
No.
I'm not excited about any new version of any software anymore. Operating systems have arrived. At this point, it's now putting fins on the '57 Chevy. We're changing the chrome. We're now with Corinthian leather instead of Spanish leather. I think Corinthian is Spanish. Anyway, there's nothing new to do in an operating system. When somebody does something new, I'll get excited about it. But right now, it's just ho-hum. It's another enhancement, polished version of the same operating system that we've had for 7 years now.
Something like that.
Longer than that. I mean, XP Service Pack 3, you could even make the case for Service Pack 2, was sort of the modern age of the operating system. Everything else has just been window dressing.
Okay, I can see that.
And, it's to the point where Microsoft or Apple has just called everything OS 10 for, 6 versions now? It's still
Pretty
10.
close.
Because they're recognizing that there actually isn't anything new. It's just still OS 10. So anyway, so
Yeah,
no,
it's
I'm not
It's curious.
excited.
The only thing I noticed when I was watching that preview video, and it's a little bit of the keynote video when I watched that, is they just and shoved it down into a start menu.
Well, it's like the start button that they put back for 8.1. When you clicked on the start button, all it did was take you to the Metro style interface. I'm like,
Yep.
why? So here it looks like they're actually, basically, if you take your Windows 8X device and you install the free add-on Classic Shell, you will already have Windows 10 and have no need to go out and buy the new
Actually, not
software.
really. So what they're doing that I think is cool, but not exciting, is they're taking that start page and putting it in a start menu. So when you click the start button now, you get the active tiles that were on the start page before. And you can resize them, you can move them around. In fact, you can make that start screen as big as your whole screen if you wanted to, the start menu. So that's clever. That's a clever way to have their cake and eat it too. They've taken the thing that everybody hated, moved it into a menu that everybody wanted, but you're not really giving them a menu. You're just menuizing the thing that people hated.
Yeah.
And there will still be independent apps running there. There will still be live tiles there. You'll be able to drag things to and from that. So it's a clever hack that they've done, but no, it doesn't excite me.
No, Yeah, I think it's kind of a waste of bandwidth, to tell you the truth.
So we'll see. It will be the dominant platform. There's just no question about that. Businesses who didn't like Windows 8 are at a point in their upgrade cycle where they've got to do something else. They won't be able to stay on 7 because hardware manufacturers aren't selling anymore. So 2 years.
7 support ends next year.
So 14 months into its release cycle, it will be the dominant platform.
Yeah.
Whether it deserves it or not, it will be. That's the power of inertia.
Sad, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know if it's sad. It's just that somebody needs to make something so much better that people jump from Microsoft. And the Linux guys aren't doing it. As much as I like Linux, you guys aren't doing anything better at all.
Yeah, it's just an iteration.
Yeah.
No game changing.
And you're busy fighting over Wayland or Mir or whatever. You're not actually doing anything useful. And neither is Apple. And nobody is. So somebody is going to have to make something exponentially better. It's got to be 10 times better than any of the operating systems we have today before anybody's going to care. And I don't think it'll be Linux or Mac or Windows. It'll be, Systunix, something that doesn't exist. Some guy who's in his garage right now tinkering over a terminal is working on what everybody's going to be using in 2040. I just don't know what it is yet. I'd buy stock in it if I did.
Or, somebody like Microsoft would buy it if they did. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't bother me, frankly. If Microsoft bought something that made them better, good. That's another one of the things that's good for everybody. The stagnated state of affairs is not good for anybody right now, especially if you're trying to sell hardware. Try to be Intel right now in a world where there's no reason to buy new hardware.
Yeah.
Look, we can put 16 cores on a chip. So all I ever do is Facebook anyway.
And we only need 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a boring time in terms of innovation. It's a great time to be alive because we're figuring out new ways to use the technology we have, but we're at a place right now where there is no new technology right now, and that's sad for me as a pioneer. I grew up in the age where we invented the desktop computer. I guess I'm greedy. I keep expecting to invent new things. Maybe that only happens once a generation. Maybe my kids will see it, but I won't.
Yeah, maybe.
Dang it, I want my flying car. I was
Or
promised
my
a flying
hoverboard.
car. Yeah,
I want my
hoverboard.
hoverboard.
Yeah, well, that's
Why?
fine.
You wouldn't be able to take it on water.
Well, it would float. You just couldn't kick it. Yeah. So the thing is, if you had the hoverboard, then you could have a stand-up hover paddleboard.
There
Right.
you go.
You just need
See?
a paddle or like a stick, gondola style. All right, and our last story of the week, there may or may not be an advanced iOS virus targeting protesters?
Yeah, from the stuff I've seen, it's pretty much confirmed that they've found a virus that specifically targets the iOS operating system, and the people who are running it seem to be anti-protesters in Hong Kong. It's one of those, you have to click on a link where you think looking at somebody's Twitter pic or something like that in order to get infected. But it was just it was kind of an interesting story here. It's the first indication that really sophisticated guys are shifting from infecting PCs and laptops and going after iOS and mobile devices.
Well, if you run, say, an oppressive regime, and you have a large body of people who are protesting your oppressive regime, but all of those people use the same operating system, wouldn't you oppress some programmer into finding a way? Because what this thing does, it's a spyware, essentially, app. It captures text messages. They're not interested in taking down a single guy. They want the whole infrastructure to collapse. So
Right.
This just makes perfect sense to me. If I were Grand Poobah of China, I would have told somebody to do this, and it probably already exists for Android as well, just hadn't been found yet.
Yeah.
Right.
So this doesn't surprise me, and because they're in China, it's entirely possible that every version of the iOS software released in China already has a backdoor written in it that they can install this app on. We know Apple can install and remove apps. There's no reason to think they wouldn't have signed an agreement to do business in China that says the Chinese government gets to install and remove apps at will.
Yeah, all they need to have is a certificate, basically.
So yeah, nothing about this is unbelievable to me. It's not surprising. It's just frustrating. Because if they can do it in China, why can't they do it in the U.S.? They probably can. And we're probably doing it to them. It's espionage, spies doing what spies do.
Yeah.
And it's just there's no impervious operating system. The shiny bauble 2.0. I'm impervious. I can do whatever I want to. This thing that says you download this, I will. Your money can't do that because I'm on shiny 2.0. What happened to all my money? It's just you have to. Nothing is impervious. There's only the myth of invulnerability that's out there, and that myth is cold comfort whenever you've lost your digital identity, or you lost your credit card was hacked, and it takes years to recover, and writing the credit bureaus and all that junk. So be smart when you're doing anything.
There's a reason Achilles' mama didn't flip him over and dip his feet back in the river too. We needed that morality play. We needed to know that no matter how powerful you seem, everybody has a chink in their armor. So, Linux guys like to say that we're invulnerable. As we've seen with Shellshock and Heartbleed, we're not. Mac guys like to believe that they're invulnerable. As we found, they're not. Just it's hard to find a takeaway. I like to have a takeaway from every story. The takeaway from this one is we're all screwed. Just deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, no. The takeaway from this story is the way they got it was they had to click on a malicious link.
True.
So that's how they got it.
But the link was crafted in such a way that if you were a Chinese dissident, you would want to click on it. It's always, as I mentioned a few episodes back, the human is always the weak part of the element. Doesn't matter how good your encryption is, how secure your passwords are, you're the soft spot. You're the meat jelly that's holding the whole thing together. And if they can make you do something stupid just for a second, it doesn't matter how good your armor is.
That's true.
And we're all just meat jelly.
Meat jelly.
Are you jelly, jam, or are you something else?
I'm a meat preserve.
I'm marmalade.
Yeah. Are you marmalade?
So there's bits of Seth Rind mixing. I don't. Moving on along. Seth, what happened this week in history?
This is actually pretty cool and germane to the show. October the 5th, 1991, the first official version of the Linux kernel, version .02, is released. Sorry, I just had the .aught in there.
0.02. That's a low version number right there.
Yeah, but that was the first official version. So
0.01 was beta, never left his laptop, I guess. 91, it wouldn't have been a laptop, huh? So that's cool. Yeah.
No. Well, I guess if you had a big enough lap, maybe. But no, it was probably a desktop machine.
You remember when they used to be called portable computers, and they had like a 5-inch black and white screen or green and white tube screen in it? Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I do too.
Looked like a suitcase, and the keyboard was attached to the bottom. Yeah, I have a non-working one in my closet at home.
Yeah, they were portable. They only weighed 50 or 60 pounds. It was practically nothing.
Yeah, practically.
I don't think they had a battery though. You still had to plug up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it wasn't using a fieldable. It was just portable. Yeah.
Golly, could you imagine taking like our smartphones and just going back to 1991 and say, hold on, let me pull up Yahoo and see,
Yeah. You would be a god if you took a fart
Yes.
app back to the Middle Ages. I mean, truly.
You'd be a wizard.
Yes,
You'd be a wizard.
Merlin was actually just a guy who fell through a time loop with an iPhone.
No, you know what you could do to make sure there was never an iPhone? Take one today with a fart app and say, hey, Steve, this is what happened.
This is what's going to
Oh.
happen. Kill the project,
No.
guys.
No kidding.
He was crap. I don't like that. And look, there's a choice. I have 14 of them loaded.
All right, and so next week
Nice.
we will be joined by Jen Wyke. I'll have to ask her. Who is who, Seth?
Well, she's someone I came across on, I believe it was opensource.com. The reason that she caught my eye was she had mentioned that she would be taking the Linux MOOC and actually load it on her computer and go through. And it's like, hey, how would you like to be about Linux? Called Everyday Linux. And we kind of talked back and forth, and so she's going to be on here. So it was cool. She's, of course, the whole bio next week. She's on the web, has a pretty good blog going to promote content for several cool open top pages out there.
Yeah, and in one of the emails back and forth, she lied and said she has listened to and likes the show. So, we know she's willing to ingratiate herself by telling blatant falsehoods. So that's nice.
Depending on which one she listened to, she no, we've had some good ones that were entertaining, to say the least.
Present company excluded. No, anyway. So Seth, what do you have for this week to bring my productivity down so that you look like a better hiring option?
Well, this week, this is about ads.info/choices. And, we talked about Facebook, and there's a whole bunch of different companies out there, and this is the consumer opt-out page for the self-regulatory program for online behavioral advertising. So that's a big mouth, but you go there, and this is browser-specific, so if you use 10 different browsers, you have to do it on each one. It doesn't follow you across browsers. It list of companies that participate in it, a list of those companies that actually customize ads for you, and then you can choose to opt out of them. You're not opting out of advertising, you're just opting out of targeted advertising. So people won't be sniping at you, they'll be blasting you with both barrels from a shotgun. You're still going to get shot at. They're not targeting you personal.
Yeah, so what this does is it doesn't stop any ads, it just makes sure you will see worse ads. This is a guaranteed worse ad generator.
Yeah, it's the opt-out of everything.
This is the placate the privacy people such as myself, make us feel better.
And it is scripting galore, man. I clicked on this before Seth started talking about it, and it just loaded, and no script just went utterly nuts. Ad blocker says there were 126 elements they blocked on this page. Holy jamoses.
Well, when you go to it, it first has to see, because, like I say, there's 117 companies, and it has to scan your system to see which of those are currently targeting you. So it takes a few minutes to run when you first click on it. But yeah, so, and if you're someone that doesn't care about such things, then move along. And next week I intend to go back to the absurd funny stuff because I've done serious things for long enough now.
Good. And we've got a couple of shows of non-Linux content. We're going back to some Linux content next week, so I'll apologize in advance for that. Next week's episode of Everyday Linux will be about Linux. I'm sorry, but I promise we'll get back to the everyday part a little later on. Thank you for listening to us, and if you are interested in supporting the show, I would love to do that. Love you to do that. You can do that at elementop.com/Patreon. You can donate as little as a penny for each show, or as much as $1 million. If you want to. I'm not going to put an upper limit on that. If you want to do $10 million, that's fine. I won't stop you.
How about this, Mark? If somebody donates $1 million, we will come to their house and do a private show just for them.
Oh, I'm going to live in their basement. I'm going to move in. I live here now. If you donate $1 million, you just bought me. I'm your manservant. I will put your socks on.
We'll never get that now.
Yeah.
I'm
Somebody was about to submit.
Yeah.
And they said, whoa.
Pretty sure the odds were low on that already. If you're doing shopping over at Amazon already, please use my link, alvinopie.com/Amazon. Your experience doesn't change. I just get a couple of bucks for sending you there. If you're interested in audiobooks, alvinopie.com/Audible. Free trial there. You get a free book of your choice. You sign up for the $15 a month plan, but you cancel it. The book is yours to keep. And there's always the donation button on PayPal. So now that I have prostrated myself and begged for money, I will thank you once again. Also, as long as I'm asking, rate us and review us on wherever you get your podcasts. Rate us and review us. And then once you've done that, go to iTunes and do it, because none of you people are using iTunes. But seriously, that's the place where all the guys who are going to give us money look. So I appreciate those who have done it, and I would appreciate it if you continue to do it. So now that I'm done begging, Chris, Seth, as always, thanks for being great hosts, and I'm going to say that ends this episode of Everyday Linux.
See you guys.
Okay, so maybe the preemptive power shutting off did help something, because I didn't hear the popping in my ear at an hour.
Cool.
Let's see when I play it back what it sounds like. Nope, broke up. Crap nuggets. So, let's see how far back it did that. There's another thing. I can't record too long, or it starts sounding
interesting.
It started at 1:41. So it looks like I'm only going to have to go for the backup audio for 5 minutes. So
that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm not sure what does it. It's always the last bit of the show. I've been meaning to do an experiment. I forgot. Just let the show continue to record for like 20 minutes after we're done. If it's always the last few minutes, then the breaking up would be at the end of that. But if I do the power shut off in the middle of it, that doesn't happen. So weird stuff, man. I need better gear, plain and simple.
That's usually what ends up happening, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you, Dave Jones, for listening. We appreciate you hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week.
See you.